Thank you for staying with us on Citizen Weekend. As promised, I'm now joined by Professor David Monda, who is a professor of political science, City University of New York, and he joins us from New York. We have two experts on international relations and governance issues joining us from Mogadishu, and we have Anwar Abdi Fattah Bashir, who is the Executive Director of the East African Institute of Peace and Governance. And we're also joined by Dr. Hussein Yusuf Ali, who is a development, governance and peace practitioner. But before we delve into the conversation, allow me to set the stage. U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday posted this to his social media. Happy Thanksgiving salutation to all of our great American citizens and patriots who have been so nice in allowing our country to be divided, disrupted, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged and laughed at, along with certain other foolish countries throughout the world for being, quote, politically correct and just plain stupid when it comes to immigration. This refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America. As an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Ilhan Omar, always wrapped in her swaddling hijab and who probably came into the USA illegally, does nothing but hatefully complain about our country, its constitution, and how badly she is treated when her place of origin is a decadent, backward, and crime-ridden nation, which is essentially not even a country for lack of government, military, police, schools, etc. And he continues to say, even as we have progressed technologically, immigration policy has eroded those gains and living conditions for many. I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, and finally, end all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization. Now, in June, President Trump, by executive order, fully restricted and limited entry of nationals from 12 countries, including Somalia. You have that on your screen. And this is what the order is based on, especially where Somalia is concerned. Could we look at the next one, please? All right, there we go. And he stated in that order that terrorists use regions of Somalia as safe havens for which they plan, facilitate, and conduct their operations. Somalia also remains a destination for individuals attempting to join terrorist groups that threaten the national security of the United States. The government of Somalia struggles to provide governance needed to limit terrorists' freedom of movement. Additionally, Somalia has historically refused to accept back its removable nationals. And by virtue of that particular statement, he went on to order that the entry into the United States of nationals of Somalia as immigrants and non-immigrants is hereby fully suspended. All right, Dr. Hussein Ali, I'm curious what the reception has been of that particular post in Mogadishu. Could you tell us how it was received? Dr. Hussein, did you hear me? All right, let's hear from Anwar. Anwar, how has that post been received in Mogadishu?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
All right, was that, Dr. Hussein, you can go ahead if you had that question. How has Trump's statement been received in Mogadishu? Dr. Hussein Ali, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Go ahead, tell us how that statement has been received in Mogadishu.
Hello? Yeah, and I think the Trump's new world order is clearly defined as a power-centric, nationalist, and heavily transactional logic, and the state behavior is driven less by norms and by capability and leverage, and which is America first. So, and it's going to have an impact. It's not well received, and both at home and also the Somali diaspora, because fronts and Somali Americans are very instrumental in the all walks of life in Somalia and in the US. So what we are going to see is a bit of turbulence, but not much is going to be changed. And because
All right, I do beg your pardon, viewer and Dr. Hussein Ali. The signal appears to be a little bit weak. But Anwar, from where you sit, how has it been received? Okay. Anwar, if you can hear me, how has the news been received in Mogadishu?
Yes, I can hear you. Am I audible?
You are you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Regarding on the subject matter, I think the latest political decree released by President Donald Trump is not the first one. It has been going on since his first term, and he has been targeting not only Somalia, but also the Muslim and Black and Latino and other countries. In other words, we can see the South, the global South, but specifically the latest one, which is banning the third world immigrants. Especially there was a temporary protection status that was established in 1990s and was given a consideration to country driven by conflicts and wars, including Somalia, Afghanistan, Sudan, Yemen, and other countries. And this is purely a politically motivated agenda, which is targeting Somalis, as long as, a lot of Somali people are joining the politics in America, especially the Democratic Party. And more specifically, there is a well-famous Somali congresswoman called Ilhan Omar, who mostly criticizes the Trump's, political decree, which always, discriminatory to non-white or non-elitists. So this one is another level, which is trying to even reject and also invalidate the immigrants that are already in the U.S. But I think this is a political decree, but the country has a parliament, and I think they will not accept such, irrational and also politically motivated decisions taken by President Trump.
All right, I'll bring you in, Professor Mwanda, at this point. How has this been received by immigrants from third world countries? Because he might have singled out Somalia, but he did say that he would be permanently pausing immigration from third world countries.
Yeah, I think it's obviously not been received very well, but part of the concern here is a domestic context. So this week we had 2 National Guardsmen. So this would be the equivalent of administration police in Kenya. They were shot by an Afghan immigrant. And as a result of this, Trump has, made a raft of changes, not only in terms of removing the temporary protected status from a range of countries, including Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan, and Haiti, and a few other countries, but he's also ramped up his rhetoric against immigrants. So there's a domestic context in line with the Trump administration being concerned that because the government in Mogadishu cannot vet a lot of these people who are coming into the U.S., this is part of the reason for his clamping down on Somali immigrants, and particularly from some of these countries that have domestic instability. So I mentioned the killing of the 2 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. Earlier this week. One of those was a green card holder from Afghanistan. And we know Afghanistan, like Somalia, has had its own internal civil war problems. So there's a lot of concern, at least in the US, that a lot of these individuals who are getting green cards from countries like Somalia and Afghanistan came into the country under dubious means. For example, in Afghanistan, a lot of them, there's allegations, they got a lot of newspapers fraudulently, and a lot of them were not properly vetted. But as usual, Trump's rhetoric tends to go hyperbolic, and it tends to target immigrants and blame them for a lot of these challenges. I think the other element, I think as one, the previous speaker spoke, is he's against Ilhan Omar, who's a Somali congresswoman who regularly speaks out against the Trump administration. But we should not also forget he's targeted Minnesota, which has the largest concentration of Somalis in the U.S. And the governor of Minnesota was Kamala Harris's running mate in the previous election. So there's also a domestic political angle to this, because Trump knows he's going to get a lot of support, particularly from his base, when he goes against immigrants and deals with this problem of immigration. So yes, he's targeting undocumented immigrants. Yes, he's targeting third world countries. Yes, there is a problem with migration, but his hyperbolic rhetoric tends to, to overstate a very legitimate concern about exactly who's coming into the U.S.
All right, we'll come back to you shortly, because I'm curious whether you took his remarks as racist, given his previous remarks where he referred to Haiti and African countries as, is it past tense? I can't use that word, but using a derogatory term. But we'll come back to that. But first, Dr. Hussein Yusuf Ali, if you can hear me now. I know Trump has said that there is no government in Somalia, but have there been attempts to engage the U.S. administration as regards its concerns? Because, as Anwar correctly stated, this is not the first time that Somalia has been, in the line of fire, so to speak. Dr. Hussein Ali, can you hear me?
I couldn't hear. Your voice was...
I'll ask you slightly louder. Sorry, viewer, for shouting.
You can sum up.
Yes, I'm asking, have there been attempts to engage the U.S. government in Mogadishu?
Yes, and I think as the Professor DM was rightly pointing out, this is an overall U.S. and presidency strategy to face one of the pressing immigration issues, which is not squarely on America, but it's also a shared problem across the world. But in the short term, this might go down well with its own sympathizers in this regard, but it's not going to be a very visible, because of the global immigration ecosystem. And Somalia is not the same Somalia, because we use a very sophisticated. The Somali citizens have been travel migration and enormous. And if the U.S. is going to take a unilateral decision, then that's up to President Trump. But there is an evidence to suggest that Somali government is in a position to vet these people. I think we can rule out that issue, because we have a very systematic and digital system in this regard. And this is not particular on Somalia. This is a new degree on the global south in general. And these are the few of a long list which President Trump has in mind in this regard.
All right, I'll come to you, Anwar. To the best of your knowledge, have there been attempts to engage the U.S. administration by the government sitting in Mogadishu? Anwar, did you catch my question?
Yeah, I cannot get you right, so
I'm asking,
please, one more.
To the best of your knowledge, have there been attempts by the government in Mogadishu to engage the U.S. administration?
I think regarding on the political level, I think it's quite the Somali government, especially the incumbent government, has the mandate to react to such remarks. But regarding on targeting the Somali community in America, not only politically motivated, but also Trump wants when these immigrants, especially under the temporary protection status, is invalidated, they will never have an access to send remittances to that people in Somalia and other countries. And this means Trump wants even to disallow that Somali people can have a business, can have a, people movement from here to America. But it's up to the Somali government to do what's right. There are a lot of countries which, when Trump released new rules that are against, they reacted. And I think Somalia now is in a position to react such, undeserved, decisions made by President Trump. But I believe, and I'm quite afraid, I disagree with the professor regarding on whether to Afghanistan or other immigrants target and kill other people in the U.S. We discourage all kinds of crimes, but it's not only those from or those countries like Somalia, Afghanistan, and others, but also within the white community in America, they do such crimes. But the government cannot exaggerate mostly, but whenever the global south or country-driven conflicts and wars do something that's against the rule, we believe it's wrong, and we agree it's wrong, but it's over-exaggerated, and Trump uses as a political means to justify his, discriminatory policy against them. So this will serve another, targeting the immigrants, not only from the Muslims or black or even that, but the entire global south. And since Trump has become the president, his first term, he uplifted and shifted the foreign policy of U.S. from global leadership to global, and now he's leveraging that kind of policy.
All right, I'll come to you now, Professor Mwanda. In his first term, he attempted to do so. Remember, hit the travel bans then in 2017, 2018, and the U.S. court took issue with that pronouncement. Are there safeguards in place that would give those whose status he says they plan to review sanctuary?
Sorry, could you repeat your question? You're breaking up there.
I was asking, does the U.S. system of government allow Trump to take such a decision unilaterally, or are there safeguards in place that would protect those who are vulnerable?
Right. I think that's an excellent question. And unfortunately, I must say, under Article 2 powers of the U.S. Constitution, the Supreme Court has given the president particular leeway when it comes to this mass deportation program and his use of Article 2 powers in the Constitution to engage in some of these activities. I think you mentioned the Muslim ban that was done earlier. That was struck down by the Supreme Court. But the Trump administration amended the ban on these countries, and it was approved. And we also see the deportation of undocumented immigrants now without due process has also been upheld by the Supreme Court. And I think I must add that in the Kenyan context, the government giving IDs to, to Kenyan Somalis without vetting may actually end up hurting Kenya, because if it happens that a Somali from Kenya or comes through Somalia into Kenya and commits some kind of terrorist act in the U.S., Kenya Airways flights to U.S. could be canceled, or Trump can again get into some very draconian measures. So to answer your question, I think the court is very much on his side, simply because of assumed constitutionality. So the courts would tend to defer to the executive in some of his national security questions. And I only see it getting a lot harder, particularly from immigrants and green card holders from global south countries, developing countries, and particularly from war-torn countries like Somalia, Afghanistan, and Haiti. It's going to get a lot worse, particularly with this administration, and especially since we should remember Trump is not running for re-election. So he's going to completely escalate his measures against Somalis and undocumented immigrants, because he's not looking to get re-elected. So look for it to get a lot worse before it gets better.
All right, I'll come to you, Dr. Hussein Yusuf Ali, before I come to you. Anwar, the reason given by Trump, one of the reasons he gave was the recent reports of fraud in Minnesota by the Somali community as regards social protection. Do you view that as a political excuse? And what do you make of the other reasons he's given? Because he says Somalia is a breeding ground for terrorists.
Right. So there was a question of some of the, a few Somalis were caught engaging in some fraud with some home care keeping program. So definitely he'll use it as a political tool. Again, as we said, because Minnesota in particular has the largest concentration of Somalis in the U.S. Governor Walz is a Democrat. He was Kamala Harris's running mate. So he really wants to leverage this question of immigration to get political mileage, because it really was very successful for him in their 2024 elections. But this also needs to be looked at in context to the domestic politics in the U.S. Right now, the economy is really struggling. Inflation is high in regards to his tariffs. So by using immigration, I think as an alternative scapegoat to some of the domestic problems that we're having, he can blame immigrants, particularly from some of the failing states, that bring immigrants into the U.S. And it's definitely going to get a lot worse before it gets better, because even for green card holders coming to Kenya or going to Somalia right now, they really need to make sure their status is in order, because they might not be allowed to return into the U.S.
All right, I'll come to you, Anwar. Now, given the security support the U.S. gives Somalia, do you think they have a say in the matter, or they just have to shut up and take it? Anwar, did you hear my question? Anwar, did you catch my question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you repeat the question, please?
I'm asking, given the security support that the U.S. gives Somalia, do they, in your opinion, have much option?
I think I said earlier, and I keep repeating it, since Trump has uplifted targeting the immigrants in the U.S., they are increasing and also winning political positions. The latest example is 2 weeks ago, Mamdani, the new mayor of New York, he was immigrant and he got his American citizenship just in 2018. So I don't believe, as the professor says, this is the court is inside and maybe Republicans are supporting. I think I have a different narrative. This is Trump-based ideology, and he wants to get some elite, supporters, but he's losing the large majority of American citizens, including the immigrants. His vice president's wife is immigrants. Trump himself, his wife, is a former immigrant. And this is specifically temporary protection status, where Trump has banned through his political decree. I think, according to Somalis, it would only affect around 700 people. And we have more than Somali, citizens in the U.S. So they are part of in the business. They now become their champion for the political position is not only in Minnesota, but also other regions in the U.S. So targeting to, specific communities, I don't think it will give, a credit, but it's a liability to his system and the wider of the Republican Party. So I think that's the agenda of Trump. And when it comes, as the professor repeated, vetting or some immigrants undocumented, I think it's not only the war-torn countries. It's quite different because Congo, Syria, look at other countries. Trump is targeting only a few countries, which are politically motivated. And the case of Somalis, as all the panelists agreed, is emanating from the political, championing of the Somali Congresswoman Ilhan and other people who are joining in Minnesota. So I think this will end up in vain, and I hope other courts and other Democratic Party and other institutions will revoke and will not agree and will not subscribe such discriminatory political agenda.
All right, I will have to conclude the conversation at that point. I do apologize, Dr. Hussein Yusuf Ali. Unfortunately, the connection was poor, but I want to thank you, Professor David Monda, City University of New York, and he is a professor of political science. Speaking lastly, there was Anwar Abdifatah Bashir, who is executive director of the East African Institute for Peace and Governance. And we also had on the line Dr. Hussein Yusuf Ali, development, governance and peace practitioner. Dr. Ali, the next time you're in Nairobi, I will be happy to host you in studio. We take a break.